Welcome to day 4 of our Python course. Today we will be covering loops in Python. Loops are a fundamental concept in programming, allowing us to repeat tasks efficiently. Let's dive right in. Loops in Python enable repetitive execution of code which can save us from writing repetitive instructions. Whether we are iterating over a sequence like a list or repeating actions based on a condition, loops are incredibly powerful. They help to keep our code clean, concise, and efficient. First, let's look at the for loop. This loop is used to iterate over a sequence such as a list, string, or range. Here's the syntax. We use the keyword for followed by a variable name, then that will take each value of the sequence, and then a colon. Inside the loop, we write the code that we want to execute for each item in the sequence. Here's an example of a for loop in action. We have a list of fruits: apple, banana, and cherry. Using a for loop, we iterate through this list, and for each fruit, we print its name. When we run this code, the output will be each fruit printed on a new line: apple, banana, and cherry. Next, let's look at range, a built-in Python function often used in for loops. It generates a sequence of numbers which we can use to loop through a set of number of iterations. The syntax includes three parts: start, stop, and step. By default, the range function starts at 0 and steps by 1, but you can customize it to fit your needs. Here's an example. This, this for loop counts from 1 to 5 using range 1, 6. The loop will print numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, as we specified that the loop should start at 1 and end before 6. This is a great way to repeat a task a set number repeated task a set number of times. Next, let's explore the while loop. Unlike the for loop, which iterates over a sequence, the while loop continues to execute as long as a specified condition remains true. It's ideal for situations where we don't know the exact number of iterations upfront. As long as the condition is true, the loop keeps running. Here's an example using a while loop. In this case, we start with I equal to 1. As long as I is less than or equal to 5, the loop will print I and increment I by 1 each time. Once I exceeds 5, the loop ends. In Python, we can control the flow of our loops using break and continue statements. The break statement exits the loop entirely, while the continue statement skips the current iteration and proceeds to the next one. These statements are useful when you need to alter the flow of the loop based on certain conditions. Here's an example using the break statement. In this loop, we check if I equals 5, and if so, we break out of the loop. The loop will print 1 through 4, but once it hits 5, it stops early due to the break. On the other hand, the continue statement skips the current iteration and moves to the next one. In this example, when I equals 3, the loop skips printing 3 and moves directly to the next iteration, printing 1, 2, 4, and 5. Now let's talk about nested loops. A nested loop is a loop inside another loop. This is particularly useful when working with multi-dimensional data, like lists of lists. The inner loop will run completely for each iteration of the outer loop. In this example, we have two loops, one for I and one for j. The outer loop iterates over values 1 through 3, and for each value of I, the inner loop iterates over values 1 to 3 as well. The output shows every combination of I and j. In some cases, we may want a loop to run indefinitely until a specific condition is met. This is called an infinite loop. You can use a while true loop, but it's crucial to control the flow with a break statement to avoid getting stuck in the loop forever. Finally, let's wrap up with some practice exercises to reinforce what we have learned today. Try creating a countdown program that prints numbers from 10 to 1 followed by blast off, or implement a guessing number game where the user tries to guess a number between 1 and 20, receiving hints like too high or too low until they guess correctly. This concludes day 4 of our Python course. We have covered the basics of loops in Python, including for loops, while loops, and how to control loop flow using break and continue. In the next session, we will dive deeper into more advanced Python concepts. Thanks for joining and happy coding!